Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov gang. Tonight, backed by popular demand, are three wise men. Aaron Shuster, a writer, producer, and director, and he is also a scholar of Middle Eastern politics. And Barak Lurie, the host of the Barak Lurie Show. And once again, the man, the myth, the legend, Ari David, the host of the Ari David Show podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. So, I mean, I'm just overfilled with emails and telephone calls in the middle of the night, people demanding for you three to be back.
Well, it's an honor. It really is fun.
We're not leaving.
They're gluttons for punishment, aren't they?
Right.
Gentlemen, let us begin with Netanyahu's speech to Congress. And President Obama is not there. And Nancy Pelosi almost cried. Ari, your thoughts?
It could really affect that eyelid job she had. You know, the plastic surgery. I'm very worried about her. It's interesting how the left always brings up breaches of protocol as a reason to engage in breaches of protocol, and this incident was just another one of those.
Barak?
Look, the fascinating part of this was, yes, of course, how Netanyahu was there and the Democrats decided to largely bow out of this, especially the notable ones, such as Pelosi, such as Biden, such as Obama, of course, and some 60 or so others. Very troublesome. But I think that the reason why they wanted to bow out of the room is because they knew that truth was about to enter into the hallowed halls of Congress. And that they could not have. Netanyahu spoke so eloquently. Why? Because he was dealing with evil and understanding how to fight evil. Those are the words that echoed. And as they say in Hollywood, the script wrote itself. And that's why he was so powerful.
Well, thank you, Barak. And also myself as a Christian, I have to say that when we talk about evil and the way that, you know, in our faith and in our religion, the importance of loving the Jewish people, the importance of loving Israel, I guess how could I say this in an understatement? When a president of the United States has to leave a place because the leader of the Jewish people is coming to talk about Israel's safety, I think there's a parallel for me anyway, almost as if certain entities sometimes have to get away when there's holy water around. Yeah. And yeah, I did say it. I think that there's something very evil in a radical in chief and in an administration that actually cannot even be present when the leader of the Jewish state is in a certain environment. I think it's very telling.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron? I have to say, following up on what you're saying, one of the things that impressed me and makes me so appreciative to be in America is rather than focusing on those losers who left or who didn't come, I was so moved by a Christian nation like America where Netanyahu can come and be amongst friends and have a heart-to-heart talk with America, and where he's invited and his speech is so well received. I mean, it was like he was a rock star. I mean, the congressmen and senators were up and down giving him standing ovations. I mean, Obama's never given a speech that well received. I mean,
absolutely.
And so I'm just very moved and touched to know that we have such great friends in America, Christian friends who support the Jewish people in Israel even more than leftist Jews. I mean, that's the amazing thing. They care more about the fate of Israel than our so-called Jewish compatriots on the left.
But gentlemen, what, I mean, I was thinking about this. What does this mean? The leader of Israel in America and the President of the United States intentionally does not come.
Yeah, it's...
Let him go for a minute. I have OCD. I need to go in certain...
That's right.
What it indicates to me is that the relationship between Israel and America has no daylight between it. The daylight is between this particular American leader and Israel, and it's actually not unique because this particular leader has no relationship with anyone in the world who has any moral backbone and spine.
You know, I was also going to say, hey, look, you know, he didn't want to be at the Charlie Hebdo march. There's certain places he doesn't want to be. Oh, but he'll speak in Cairo in 2009 and let the front 2 rows be filled with Muslim Brotherhood. But there's certain places where he just does not want to be. And I think that it's just undeniable that he doesn't want to upset certain people and movements in America and throughout the world. Hey, look, I wonder if Morsi came and gave a speech in Congress. No matter what protocols were broken, I bet you Obama would be there.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I had a whole show on this before, and it's about, and we called it that there's something odd about Obama. And with respect to the presidency, the reality is that he has a very strong affinity for Islam. And he is informed and motivated to do only those things that he believes will not get in the way of Islam, will not insult Islam. And so your point of not attending the demonstrations in Paris is an excellent one. The apology tour that he had, how he refuses to call it radical Islam, how he refuses to recognize the terrorism that's going on in the world in every other respect. How the Jews who were killed in the supermarket in Paris were not Jews, they were just ordinary people.
It's not a coincidence, all this over
How the Christians, the Egyptian Copts Christians who were just recently beheaded, well, they were just citizens. It's not a coincidence, just like you said.
And he's supposedly a Christian president. I haven't seen once him really narrow in on the persecution of Christians and the root of Islamic jihad that's targeting Christians. And of course, as well as Jews, etc., everyone. But I just mean, there's a question mark there how a supposedly Christian president is completely disinterested in the persecution of the faithful of his church.
Well, he went kicking and screaming only to protect the Yazidis. That was it. With regard to everything else, in terms of the slaughter of the Christian people and the crucifixions that are going on and the beheadings, the horrific stuff that's going on, he does nothing.
And another tragedy is just the silence of even the leaders of the Christian church and in each community, tragic silence. But I was also going to say there's so much to bring up here. Maybe this is for another time. Well, you know, this thing about how, well, ISIS also kills Muslims, you know, as if this somehow exonerates Islam, that they also kill Muslims. Well, yeah, but Stalin killed Bolsheviks, and totalitarian regimes always eat their own children. Totalitarian revolutions always eat their own children.
French Revolution.
And so do death cults. If there's a death cult, it turns inward and it's suicidal and it kills its own people. So, you know, they're always trying to whitewash or exonerate Islam somehow. Of course it's going to kill Muslims. That's why we love Muslim people, but we're also telling the truth about the evil of Islam. And this is where the left succeeds in its propaganda. It says that people like us are anti-Muslim people, whereas in fact we love Muslim people. We're talking about an ideology.
The radical side of it.
Yeah, but I've strayed a little bit from it, and perhaps we would maybe disagree, as maybe you would argue that it's the radical side, whereas I would say the root of the problem is in Islam itself, but that's for another debate.
Sure.
Aaron?
What is the question, Jamie?
That's a good question as well. This is my fault for straying aside, but we're talking about Obama not being at the speech.
Right. You know, strangely enough, I was thinking that it has an unintended consequence, which is that because Obama is refusing to do certain things, it's actually forging a strange alliance between Israel and some Arab countries that wouldn't have occurred before.
Yeah.
Well, we know the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians are all very nervous about Iran getting the bomb.
There was an editor of an Arab magazine
occurring, a secret alliance occurring, and maybe not so secret. That there's discussions going on now between those countries.
It escapes me now, but there was an editor of a magazine in the Arab world that actually denounced Obama,
that was in a
right?
Saudi newspaper.
Even they're taking the side.
Right. They said that Obama should listen to Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Right.
It is interesting, just to maybe a last point on the Bibi point. It's they call it a historic speech of Netanyahu coming here, and it was. But ironically, it is Obama's distancing himself and his de facto boycotting of the speech that helped make it the historic speech that it became.
Absolutely. Now, Barak, you raised something. Hey, look, let's not ignore this here. I think that Obama was just foaming at the mouth, just trembling because of a lot of things going on that Netanyahu's there to begin with, but out of Netanyahu's mouth comes the word militant Islam. Yeah. And I mean, we've got an administration that's just in complete denial mode on this issue. What do you think, Ari?
You're absolutely right.
I love how you guys keep telling me that how right I am about everything.
Well, we want to be back for next
week. Go
ahead.
I love this.
You know, the checks in the mail. I think two things happened with the Netanyahu speech. Number one, Obama, though he denies it, saw for the first time in 7 years a real State of the Union speech given by a real president of the United States or a real adult. Because if we had a president like Reagan or Kennedy even, or any great president, that would have been the speech that we see as State of the Union speeches each year. The thing that I would actually really like to see John Boehner do next, not that he'll do it, but I can always dream a little dream, is I'd love to see him invite El-Sisi to come give a speech and have a person from the Islamic world who understands Islam.
Obama would actually, I think, fly out of the country during that part, just not to upset the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
Or he'd fly over to Las Vegas for a fundraiser.
But Ari,
or maybe
Obama,
he'd light a Reichstag fire.
Oh,
ouch!
So different crowd than I expected.
Well done.
Ari, but your interpretation of Bibi saying militant Islam and how this would infuriate the administration.
Well, clearly the administration would like no connotation to be drawn between Islam and anything militant. The only connotation they'd like with Islam is, of course, peace. Mm-hmm. And so by saying that, it's a direct contradiction to the entire fantasy world. Right. It's almost like a patient for a therapist who has a borderline personality disorder, where they've created a bubble of reality for themselves to live within, and inappropriate relations or kind of body language positioning that makes someone really uncomfortable, that's drawn from that bubble of reality that they sit within. And then anytime that bubble of reality is pierced at all, they react almost violently to it. How dare you say militantism? How dare you connotate
Now, just wait, you used a very good metaphor. But so far, Barak is in the lead with his metaphors, because last week he said Reform Judaism is like having a one-night stand thinking you're in a relationship.
Jamie, I'm above competition with anyone, especially people like Barak.
Okay, Barak.
The militant Islam, it's really, that phrase, and your point is so well taken, Jamie, about this.
And it was a great point.
It really is a great point.
You made a great point.
But the beauty of it is it's so transparent, and the only person who thinks that no one is noticing is Obama. I mean, it's really, it's like the emperor who has no clothes situation, and he thinks that everyone's loving of him and thinks that he's so wonderful. But we all see he's truly naked. Not only is he naked, but he's also powerless. Yeah. And these phrases of like, let's make sure to call it ISIL for some reason.
But wait, what do you mean he's powerless? In what context?
Powerless in the context he's lost dramatically in the 2014 elections.
Oh,
I mean, every 2 years he's lost more and more power.
Right. But he's not, okay, that's another argument.
Yeah,
so he's still got a lot
it's an important thing.
He can still do a lot of damage to the country.
Absolutely, that's true. And there's an example of breaking protocol again with all the executive orders. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that he's so hell-bent on making sure that you don't say Islamic with any other word associated with it. Yeah. Just don't use that word Islamic. Everyone's a citizen, and everyone is an extremist, and everyone's violent. And you've got your own historical problems too. And it's so bizarre. I wonder how it's like to be in the administration, actually working for the administration.
It's crazy.
You know how tense it must be. How they must all feel like they have to walk in eggshells every time they utter a phrase.
Imagine during the Cold War that we can't mention communism or Marxism or socialism. Aaron? What's the question, right?
Yes, please.
militant Islam being mentioned and referred to by Bibi?
Well, yeah, I'm sure it drove him up the wall, because he's really spent the last 6 years trying to scrub the words militant Islam, jihad, anything related to it, from like FBI training manuals, military manuals, anyone who was teaching the truth about Quranic verse, etc., and the way that they think was fired and let go. And so there's kind of been a purge even going on in the military with numerous generals. I mean, there's never been a president who's fired and let go so many military generals in the history of the country. And it's all gone on quite unmentioned, you know, which is after Benghazi, 3 generals were fired.
Yeah, gentlemen, let's not forget, for our viewers, let's not forget who this radical in chief is, and I would say liar in chief as well. Let us not forget, in the early part of the administration, Muslim Brotherhood front groups came to the administration and said, we don't like what's in your FBI manuals. Let us take a look at them. They gave it to them. They said, here's 1,000 points referring to Islam and Islamic Jihad. We want it taken out. The Obama administration agreed and took it out of the FBI intelligence training manuals.
Well, I think you give them too much credit to say that the Muslim Brotherhood did it. You know that the Obama people wanted to do it anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll go on those points.
And the director of the FBI just recently said that there's jihadist activity going on in every state except Alaska. But we're not allowed to talk about it. It's kind of an Orwellian nightmare.
Okay,
really,
I want to move on, but before we move on, just what's this thing? You know, we mentioned it earlier. What's this thing with Nancy Pelosi not getting up at certain times, putting her back to Netanyahu? I think, if I'm correct, she left early. Then there's this thing about how I think she herself said that she almost cried. What is this? Why would you cry? Why would you cry that an Israeli leader has come here telling us that Israel needs to defend itself and the West needs to defend itself from Iran and radical Islam? Why would you cry?
Because she needed to change her depends.
This is a tough crowd. This is a little too tough a crowd for me.
Okay.
Listen, I think that the reason why she said that is because she wants to be able to say, we cannot, I'm crying because we're not giving peace a chance. That's the theory, the John Lennon excuse. That all that Netanyahu is talking about, and everyone here that's applauding, they're all plotting war. That's what they're plotting. And that's why she's so upset and wants to cry about it. Of course, never mind that it's purely political on her part. And you can say everything is political in the entire room, including Bibi. But it's not so.
I mean, just what really, I'm trying to use good words here without getting into foul language. Why doesn't Nancy Pelosi want to cry when 21 Coptic Christians are on their knees and get beheaded?
Can I be very blunt?
How come she doesn't want to cry what's happening to those girls under Boko Haram? That's worth crying
May I
about.
be blunt about Nancy Pelosi and liberalism entirely? Because it's so simple. She's a racist, flat out. Racist, Jew-hating racist. There, take that, Nancy Pelosi. The idea that she's hearing a speech given by the Prime Minister of Israel making the argument that Iran should stop clinging to their nuclear weapons and their Koran. Meanwhile, you have an administration, an entire party, and liberal philosophy hell-bent on removing the Bible and legally owned weapons from American citizens who cause no crime or problems, is just the height of warped reality. And the only people who could seriously believe in this kind of stuff have some deep-rooted hatred of Americans and Christians and Jews, and the definition of those people has to be racist.
You see an anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
I take a different approach, and I unfortunately have to...
He's too diplomatic.
I reject that approach. I think that the thing that's going on here is pure ignorance on the part of Pelosi and people like her. Yes, she's guided by her sense of own politics and such, but she's a fool. I don't think she's anti-Semitic. I don't think she's racist, but she is a fool. And she's a useful idiot, as they used to say in the old days of Russia when the Americans joined the communist cause. That's what she is. And they ignore history and they ignore evil. And for that reason, they are culpable, but not racist.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, this is also what's very interesting is the left always gets to call us names, and then somewhere when somebody like Ari gets up and gives it back to them, they have a hard time with it.
I hope so.
I would also say, look, I think that there's a lot of people on the left that are naive, but I would say that in the Democratic Party now with Obama and people like Nancy Pelosi, I think we're past the state of this being naivete. I think there's something deliberate there, but we can agree to disagree. Aaron, before we move on?
Well, I think Obama has kind of made Jew-hating safe in America, and we're going to be discussing a little later the BDS.
Yeah.
But I think it's encouraged that environment, that it's okay to hate Israel, it's okay to hate Jews. That's cool with this White House. And Andrea Tantaros on Fox News caused quite a stir because she asked yesterday, is this White House anti-Semitic? And I think that's a question people need to ponder. Is there a dark animus of Jew hatred within the Democratic Party? Does it lurk there in the shadows? And maybe that's why they have to vilify Netanyahu. It's kind of like in 1984, he's Goldberg.
Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, and whatever you guys want to say, try to weave it in there. Because I was going to say it especially exists on in academia and on the campuses. It's just incredible what's allowed to be said against Jewish people and against Israel on campuses. I mean, we couldn't even imagine this being allowed against any other race or religion, except, of course, I'm sure white people, that would be allowed. But let's begin, quote unquote, Israeli apartheid question mark. And we know that, especially on the American campuses, in colleges, higher institutions, everyone's, really gung-ho, the Palestinian groups, the leftist groups, about this so-called Israeli apartheid. Is there an Israeli apartheid? And my lead-in question would be, what kind of apartheid is it when Jewish people in Israel can't even say prayers on top of the Temple Mount?
Well, that's my exact point about it.
Didn't mean to steal it, but go ahead.
Actually, they just passed a law that's going to allow Jews to pray on the Temple Mount.
Okay, but up till this
something.
Okay, but up till this point, even the fact that they weren't allowed. But go ahead.
I'm of the opinion that until Jewish sovereignty is restored upon Zion on the Temple Mount, and the keys to the Temple Mount are taken from the Arab and Muslim Waqf and given to the rabbis, there really is no true Jewish sovereignty over Israel. Part of the warfare Islamic ideology makes on its enemies is a warfare of architecture and place. And the fact that the Dome of the Rock stands upon the Temple Mount where the temple used to stand, and the fact that Jews have controlled this piece of real estate since 1967 and haven't re-Judified it to the point where they allow Arabs to cause riots if Jews dare tread up there, and arrest Jews and kick them out of the country or sentence them to long prison term for praying, shows that the Israeli government itself, which is many times controlled by leftists, is not acting in the Jewish people's best interest or with an awareness of the kind of warfare that's made on the Jewish people by our enemies.
Well, what kind of apartheid is there? Okay, first of all, you compare it through the rest of the Middle East. Arabs have more rights in Israel than they have in anywhere else in the Arab Middle East.
Right. You're absolutely right. To say apartheid at all, and I want to get to Ari's point because it's a very good point. Apartheid in Israel is so upside down. It's like saying, that, I don't know, California is really Antarctica. It's truly an upside down world to say that. This country, of all countries in the world, apartheid, are you kidding? This is where there are so many diverse peoples in Israel. And not only that, but 20% of the population is actually Arab, whether Muslim Arab or Christian Arab. And they participated in all walks of life. There are doctors, there's a Supreme Court justice who's an Arab, no less. They are in the army, they're everywhere.
Barak, one way to crystallize this issue, if an Israeli citizen and his family just want to move to Gaza and live somewhere in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Good point.
Okay, but if Arabs or Palestinians want to move to Nazareth or to Israel, it would be no problem.
That's right.
So where is the outrage on this? Go ahead.
Right. It's funny, when they use the word settlements, you get this vision of Jewish settlements going into the West Bank, or formerly in the Gaza, and you see these guys kind of going in with their cowboy hats and making a little settlement for themselves, of course, and then they're somehow encroaching upon naturally Arab lands. But of course, you know, when Arabs come to Israel, no one talks about that at all. It's not an issue. Arabs are allowed to be in Israel. They're full-fledged citizens. They're incorporated into society. They're welcomed into society. Where's the apartheid? Of course, the apartheid is in the West Bank. It's in the Arab world, where if you are anything other than a Muslim, you cannot have a full-time job. You can't have even a house that is higher than your neighboring Muslim. And if you're a woman, well, forget about it. If you're gay, well, you're dead. That's where the apartheid is.
Well, I'd like to know where these students, for instance, the Students for Justice in Palestine and these Muslim groups and leftist groups in universities, on American campuses, where are there protests for Jewish people being allowed to run for a government position in Saudi Arabia, or in Pakistan, or in Egypt if they wanted to move there?
You can't even bring a Bible into Saudi Arabia.
No, but you can do it in Israel, because there are Arabs in the Israeli parliament.
Sure.
First of all, apartheid was an actual law on the books in South Africa. I mean, they actually had a law of racial laws. There's no such laws in Israel. In fact, Israel is a liberal democracy with a Supreme Court which is very far to the left, and usually comes down on the sides of Arab legal arguments often, at the expense of Jewish citizens of Israel. So they almost go out of their way to defend the rights of Arabs. I mean, in Israel we have, members of the Knesset are Arab.
You can't find one law, not one law, that says that an Arab citizen has less in the way of rights than an Israeli citizen. There is no separate water fountains, there's no separate schools, there's no separate military, there's no separate anything.
In fact, the Arabs have exemptions.
They have exemptions if they want, and they can participate if they want. There's zero. And so merely saying it so, it does not make it so, of course, and it's just the big lie, capital B, capital L.
Well, Ari, referred to racism earlier. Hey, look, when I take a look at the left and how it treats Israel and the Arab world, and when you hold the Israelis, when you hold Jewish people up to a higher moral standard, you're implying a superiority to their civilization. When you're expecting less of Arabs and of the Arab world and of Muslims, you're expecting less of them because they're not as advanced yet. And I would say that there's a racism there. There is a racism towards Arabs by not expecting as much from them as from Jewish people.
I've been thinking about a lot about this point. You know how American media is constantly trying to make hay of a Republican or a conservative thinking Obama is a Muslim. And they basically perp-walk Scott Walker a few days ago, trying to get him to admit Obama's a Christian. Now think about this. They're trying to make sure no one says Obama's a Muslim as if there's something wrong with Islam. But the ideology they insist Obama is a member of, the religion Obama is a member of, is the very ideology responsible for the Crusades and the Inquisition and all the horrors the left and Obama constantly talk about. So it's amazing that they treat Islam as if there's something wrong with it, and they don't hold it to a higher standard themselves, which indicates to me that the media and the Democrat Party and the left is ripe to be accused of Islamophobia. Right?
Yeah, what gets to me too is, well, what's Obama? Oh, I think he's Christian. Oh, I don't think he's Muslim. We've got all these confused people running around. Get some reporters and investigators and look into it. Or get Daniel Pipes' articles. Daniel Pipes has written a lot of evidence and documentation on Obama's Islamic background. He's just basically pointing that what his background was and how he was raised. Okay, so those things are facts. So where has been one reporter that asked the question, when was the conversion moment?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Where did
how,
it? Okay, maybe he is a Christian, but when did the conversion occur? When did he depart from that Islamic background? And where are the reporters asking him these questions?
Yeah, it's amazing. They only ask conservatives and Republicans about Obama's ideology. They never ask Obama.
Like, for instance, John Guandolo, former FBI agent, said that Brennan is a Muslim and that he converted to Islam during an operation against him, right? And I know many people that go, you know, I just don't believe that. I don't think so. Okay, well, you don't think so. We don't know. But my question is, why was he never asked? Why was the leader of the CIA never even asked questions about this?
Right. Well, I think the more clear answer, by the way, I loved your point about the higher expectations, and I just wanted to address
that was another good point. I'm making so many good points.
But I like it because I think Bush described it as the soft bigotry of lowered expectations, or low expectations. And that is so apt here. You know, somehow Israel has this standard and the rest of the world has this standard. But and even then, they don't even realize their own double talk. Because when they talk about the Arab world, they say, well, the Arab world is the Arab world. And they don't at the same breath say, well, there should be a Jewish world where only Jews live. Not that we're asking for that. But somehow Israel should be a multicultural society, which it is, by the way, and should open its borders completely, while the Arab world, well, they should be totally Arab. So Israel should allow its Jews, of course, but also its Arabs and its Christians and everyone else, but the Arabs get to be only Arabs. It's a double talk. Yeah. So your other point was
great as well.
Well, the point about the investigations and such.
Yeah, and my points are much better than Ari's.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I look better.
You're right. You're right. I can't deny. Okay,
it's a top-down thing.
Okay.
And the top-down thing is just as in the same way that Obama refuses to allow anyone to say ISIS or Islamic State or Islamic terror, and they must only say ISIL, and they can only say violent extremism. Just in the same way, he manages to also suppress investigation into his own personal background and to those he cares about.
Israeli apartheid, question mark, Aaron Shuster.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like someone here on this panel said, I mean, it's a topsy-turvy view of the world. I mean, we have, like, for instance, if we take the Gaza peace agreement, what was part of the agreement? Every Jewish community had to be uprooted and moved out of Gaza, as if America was enforcing a Nazi Judenrein policy that Arab lands must be Jewish free. No Jew, not one Jew can live in an Arab territory. But why are Arabs allowed to live in a Jewish territory? Again, it goes back to the double standard. It's a complete hypocrisy, and it's an enforcement of a racial law by saying Jews can't build settlements in Judea and Samaria because Arabs live there.
Can we make this very simple?
It's ridiculous.
Your point just
okay. Just wait. I'm going to let you conclude on that.
Yeah.
Because we're out of time. Like we do at the end of every show, look into the camera and make a declaration on behalf of Israel. Go ahead, Ari.
I do declare Israel has to defend itself the same way I said last week and the week before that. Jews have to take responsibility for their own defense. Israel has to take responsibility for its defense, and the Jews in Israel need to take pride in their faith and their ideology and defend it to the death the way their enemies do.
Barak, Lurie.
The Jew. Who is the Jew? The Jew is that kid in 4th grade who, when the substitute teacher came in and she asked the class, where are we? The Jew is the one who says, teacher, we are on chapter 8, dividing by fractions. Something like that. And the whole class just yells at him because they want to say, teacher lets us play now. Teacher lets us do whatever we want. But the Jew says, we're continuing on. We have standards. And that is why the world hates Israel. That is why the world is now hating America. And that is the reason why the world is now hating Christians. Because we hold the world to a higher standard. Nobody likes it.
Very profound. And the last words go to the Glazov gang's Buddha of knowledge, Aaron Shuster.
Well, it seems very much like we're living through times that are echoing the 1930s, where we see increasing anti-Semitism throughout the world. But what's the big difference in the world, and as Netanyahu made mention of is in his speech, the big difference is that the state of Israel exists now. And there's a place that not only defends Jews, but a place where Jews can go to and find a home. In the night when Hitler was on the rise, Jews had nowhere to go. The doors were closed to them, and it was basically they were locked in a burning building and had nowhere to flee. But now, fortunately, we have the great state of Israel, a great country, a liberal democracy, the American 51st state on the eastern frontier that upholds so many of America's values, and we must never lose track or sight of that.
Very meaningful and profound, and I'm very grateful. Aaron Shuster, Barak Lurie, and the one and only Ari David. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week on the Glazov Gang. Good night.